Good morning. It's Wednesday. I'm here with Ashley Kilgore today.
Hi.
Ashley Kilgore is with Integrative Counseling Solutions, and she's a SNAP therapist like me.
Yeah.
And she has trained and uses our SNAP program as a foundation for treatment for survivors. And today we're going to talk about why survivors are often afraid of new relationships. And then, you mentioned, and I see this too, is that sometimes they're afraid of the relationship, but they will want to have experiences or have brief companionships.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. Which I think is perfectly
Absolutely.
fine, as long as everybody's doing healthy things and
being safe.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's whatever it takes to get you away from the abuser. Go for it. But let's talk about and give some examples of why survivors are afraid of new relationships. And then we're going to give you 2 tools that you can use to help you ensure that new relationships are safe and healthy for you. So, excuse me, Ashley, in working with your clients, what are the themes that you hear that have to do with survivors being afraid of new relationships?
Well, I think the biggest one is just a fear of meeting somebody else who's toxic and unhealthy. And because I remember reading in Psychopath Free, he mentions like everyone has this innocence, but when you run into a psychopath, that innocence kind of it shifts, it changes. And so you kind of see the world through a brand new lens. And
Yes.
So with that, it's both a gift, but it's also really scary because it's like, oh, this is way more common than I thought it was. There's a lot of people who are like this. And that was the worst experience I've ever had. I absolutely do not want to go through that again.
So basically taking the new information and then integrating it into our perspective, it's like there's all these things sitting right in front of our face that was there all along, but we didn't know what it was and we didn't know what we were looking at. Now we do. And so we feel like that because we can see it more easily, that might increase the chance that we're going to run into this again in relationships. For me, I know that some of my clients are fearful of new relationships because they feel ashamed about their past. And they still feel like that they are a liability because of their history and their experiences. And so when they meet a good person, someone that might be good for them, they don't feel good enough, so it's not only running into someone that might be abusive or toxic, but also not feeling good enough about yourself that you deserve better and you deserve healthy and happy relationships and people that treat you with love and respect. And after those relationships that are abusive, you kind of are left feeling disgusted by human beings. And that, everybody who's swarming around the abuser too, you lose faith in people that you thought were your friends or you thought that really got you or knew you or cared about you. But then as the story's playing out, as it turns out, those people got to go too, because they're actually not on your team. So it can be scary moving on to a new relationship, and you don't have to.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to if you don't want to. And in fact, maybe it's a good idea to not do it if you don't feel ready to do it. So don't force yourself if you're not feeling like a true desire to do this. You don't have to.
Right. Exactly.
And like we said, if you want to have short-term companionship and people that are, just people you're comfortable with that you want to spend time with, and that's all it is, and that's okay too, right? So let's give 2 tools that people can use to sort of make sure that the friends and, dating relationships that they're going to encounter aren't unhealthy or toxic or abusive. One of them is learning to trust your instincts.
Yeah.
That's a doozy.
Yeah.
Because our instincts have sort of been shattered. So you have to learn how to do that again. Ashley, can you talk about learning to trust your instincts again?
Sure. So when we are involved with somebody who is narcissistic or toxic or a psychopath, they have conditioned us to not listen to our gut. That's where, gaslighting and projection and all the manipulation comes in. It's, no, you don't know what you think you know. And so you're left feeling kind of like, oh, okay, maybe my gut is wrong. Maybe my intuition's off. And so I can't trust it. And so like Mandy was saying, one of the tools that we as survivors in recovery have to learn is how to relearn how to trust our gut. So if something feels fishy or shady, it's okay to go with that.
Yeah. I was just speaking with someone yesterday about how empathic people will tend to be more afraid of getting it wrong and mischaracterizing someone or feeling like they've laid judgment on someone. And the idea of getting it wrong is scary because, then what kind of a person does that make me? If I falsely accuse someone, or if I've pointed at someone and going, that's a creepy person. It seems mean, like you're being judgmental. And so we will often be more afraid of causing harm that way than the actual threat. The book that really talks a lot about this is called The Gift of Fear. And I get his name wrong every time. Okay. Gavin de Becker. Sometimes I say Becker to Gavin. I don't know why. Gavin de Becker, The Gift of Fear. Excellent book, right? Teaches you how to get those instincts back and gives you permission to rely on your observations. One thing this person yesterday was saying how that, someone will get into the elevator with someone alone who they're getting a creepy feeling from, but they'll force themselves, to be okay with the person. So it's okay to not feel okay with someone. And my thing I'd like to say about trusting your instincts again is that it's not about judging.
Right.
We're not judging a person and saying that they're a bad person. It's not even about the person. It's about the behavior, right? It's about the behavior. There are things that people do that are that give us little signals. For example, someone who does micro boundary crossing. Or another one that the book talks about is teaming, forced teaming, where all of a sudden we're a we. It's a very effective tool that predators use. So, there's ways that you can sort of detect things. And, oh, right. Okay, so we were talking about trusting your instincts.
Right.
And we skipped the first one.
We can go back to it.
Oh, wow. Right. So learning to trust your instincts again. It's okay to not feel okay.
Right.
And we're not judging people. Let's just get that straight right now. We're not judging people. We're looking at behaviors, and then we are assessing risk. And then you're deciding if it's worth the gamble or not. That's all. The other thing we can do is go ahead now before you start dating, and without thinking of any particular person when you're making this list. It's not about the last person you dated and what was wrong with them. This is about what you want in your life in an ideal setting, but also what you don't want in your life, ideally. And so we call that naming your deal breakers. Can you talk about naming your deal breakers?
Yeah. So I think you mentioned this in the SNAP classes. When we first get into the relationships, we've got all the feel-good chemicals going on, and it's exciting and it's new and it's passionate. And that's when if we don't know our deal breakers, it's really easy to overlook those. So that's why it's like she was mentioning, it's so important before in getting involved in any new relationship to know what those are up front. I had a client share with me that, one of their deal breakers is saying mean things, but in a calm tone of voice. And so, just being aware of those. So when those things start cropping up, in addition to learning to retrust your gut, it's a good tool to kind of suss out like, okay, is this a healthy person or not?
I call it writing a letter to your future self. it's like you're getting in a time machine. You know, you're just, right now I'm in my logical mind. I'm in my logical, rational mind right now. My feel good love chemicals are not firing off, which means I'm not high. And so I know right now what I'm not okay with. Then you meet somebody and you start to really like them and be attracted to them. And then you'll sort of, I don't know, accept the unacceptable because the guy's so wonderful in these other areas, but he does this one thing, you know, and you're like, oh, well, you know, nobody's perfect. Yeah, so naming your deal breakers is a way that you can, you know, ensure when you see that indicator, it's factually right there. Yeah. And you already told yourself that you're not okay with that. And so that's a good way to give yourself a signal. For me, an example of a deal breaker would be that you're feeling confused by this person a lot. You know, you're like researching their behaviors. You don't know what to expect from them. Things that are not a big deal are a big deal, and things that should be a big deal aren't a big deal. They also will say things while simultaneously behaving the opposite way. That's like saying bullying is bad and also you're ugly. You know, like, no, bullying, like, you're bullying right now while you're saying bullying is bad. Somebody in my house, someone used to scream at us, "Control your emotions!" You know, like, okay, that's hilarious. So yeah, if you're feeling confused by the person's behavior or by the relationship, you don't know what to expect, and things are sort of topsy-turvy, that's not a good sign. No. If their stories don't make sense and you're confused by their stories, like, well, there's a big hole in that story. They're not giving me the full story here. So you just feel confused. You turn into a detective and you're trying to piece things together all the time. Shouldn't really be like that, right? Of course, we're going to get to know each other in a healthy, slow way, but things should make sense, and the person should be kind of consistent with their attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we did it.
I think so.
Why survivors are afraid of new relationships. It's because we are left really sort of disgusted, worn out, and I don't know.
Everything's upside down.
Yeah, and it's like your bubble is burst.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do about that is we're going to name our deal breakers ahead of time, and we're going to practice and learn how to trust our instincts again. And a good book for that is The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. I highly recommend it. Okay, I hope you guys have a really great day. Thanks, Ashley, for joining me. It's always awesome. Love talking about the stuff with someone else who gets it. All right, you guys have a good day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.